Hey everybody, I just want to make a quick video going down a little piece of musical history lane if I can indulge myself for a moment. When I was a kid growing up, I was born in 1970. So in the 70s, the only music we had in my household was stuff like disco, R&B, uh, soul music, a lot of dance orientated type stuff. The hardest thing into rock that we had was probably like, the Mamas and the Papas and a couple Beatles records, original ones. And Sonny and Cher, I mean, it is what it was. But that's what we really had in the house. And I didn't really hear a lot of rock and roll music unless I was in the car. And then you would hear the Beatles, or pardon me, you would hear more like the Eagles. You would hear, Three Dog Night. You would hear early Tom Petty. You would hear stuff like, Steely Dan. You would hear Fleetwood Mac. You would hear Peter Frampton. You would hear the radio fodder of the day. And I liked a lot of it, but in the house, we mostly just had records. My mother was a member of the Record of the Month Club back then. I know people don't remember what that is. And we would just have all these albums, but most of it was all dance and R&B and disco, like I said. And I loved all that stuff. I still do to this day. But there wasn't anything really, really hard rock. And then one day on TV, I saw this band. And I didn't know what to make of them. But I knew as soon as I heard them, I was like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? They had these really, really heavy rolling drum beats that sounded tribal. They had distorted guitars. They had this guy in the front of the band with the stripe on his face, like half Native American, half British sailor. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was 10, okay? But I remember it made such an impact. The look was amazing, the sound was amazing. And that band was Adam and the Ants. And ever since then, I've been a huge, huge, huge Adam and the Ants fan. I'll sing the praises of what was going on with that band in the early 80s to anybody. I'll still say to this day, they say, what records do you have to hear? And I'll be like, da, 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 and you got to hear Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier. Here's my baby. I walked down to the record store at 10 years old in New York, Albany, New York, upstate New York. And there was a place called Strawberries. It was Strawberries Records and Tapes is what they used to call it. It was like the biggest chain that we had in the area. I don't know how far it was across the country, but it was big up here. And if you wanted anything, you went to Strawberries. And I walked down there, money tucked deep in my pocket. And I came walking home with this record, so proud of myself that I had the album of the guys that I had just seen on TV. And this record is literally just top to bottom was just such an amazing ride. I kid you not, but from Dog Eat Dog, Ant Music, the Ants Invasion, Killer in the Home, which to this day, wow. Kings of the Wild Frontier, Magnificent Five was cool. Don't Be Square Be There. How can you not love it? Physical, which we've heard Nine Inch Nails cover, an amazing track. The Human Beings even cool, with the naming of the Native American tribes and everything. It's such a stellar record from top to bottom. The look, the sound, the band was just on fire. I remember seeing around that time they had a concert, the Ants in Japan, and it was just magnificent. And it was like such a great, great trip. I can't tell people how great that record was or how much it meant to me at that period in time. It was like the first introduction to heavy music. Shortly after that, in 1981, they released Prince Charming. And this was a little bit of a departure from Kings of the Wild Frontier. There's a lot more horns on it. It sounded a little bit more orchestrated. But I was a trumpet player in school. From the fourth grade on, I played in the school bands as a trumpet player. And hearing that in a rock record really was like kind of cool for me. I was like, this is just amazing. They got horns in there. And I'd be at home learning all the horn licks that you would hear in the songs. You know what I mean? And I mean, when you look at this record, I mean, from Scorpios, Picasso Visits the Planet of the Apes. I'm not going to say it in the real, way it's written because I can't pronounce it and I'll just jumble the words and it'll sound horrible. But this thing was just an amazing record. Prince Charming, Five Guns West, That Voodoo, Stand and Deliver, Mile High Club, Mohawk, even Ant Rap, Sex. I mean, this was just an incredible album to follow up another incredible album that came before it. So for me, it was just like another niche into my Adam Ant history that meant so much to me. I'm amazed these records still look and play as well as they do, because I played them so many times, over and over and over again. Great stuff. After Adam and the Ants kind of disbanded or broke apart, if you will, there was another really great record. It sounded kind of like Prince Charming with just a little bit more R&B mixed into it, and that was Friend or Foe. And I played the hell out of this record. And I can tell you right now, Desperate But Not Serious was probably my favorite song on the planet for about a good 2 or 3 years when I was just a kid. But this album is loaded with so much great stuff. You know, Something Girls Place in the Country, Hello, I Love You. And by the way, Man Called Marco, for some reason, I can play over and over again with that weird Sergio Leone type Western feel to it. I just loved it. Try This for Size, Made of Money. Come on, this is like pop masterpiece type stuff. You know what I mean? All the songs in it easily could have been on the radio. Some of them are a little bit avant-garde and out there for it, but still, to see the stuff that Adam and of course his writing partner and guitarist, Marco Perrone, who, by the way, was a huge influence on me when I was a guitar player coming up. You know, I still, to this day, listen back to Marco and say, oh man, it was so brutal and straightforward and simple, but so bright. And it can't say enough about Marco Perrone, but this album really meant a lot to me too. They did a reissue in the early 80s of Dirk Wears White Socks. And it came out on vinyl. And it was really like a different kind of Adam and the Ants. It wasn't the lineup that you were used to when it was Adam and the Ants. And it wasn't like necessarily the pop that like when Marco stayed and everybody else kind of disappeared. But Dirk Wears White Socks was a good glimpse back into the early days of Adam and the Ants. And there was some really good songs on here. Some of it's a little bit, you know, out there. But, you know, I love Table Talk. Kick, I think, is just one of the great songs. I mean, it's just amazing, amazing song. Of course, Xerox is in there, which is another one. So there's some really good songs on here. Really punk rock, though. It's really stripped down. It's really a stripped down record, but still, it's an essential thing that I would say that you have to own with Adam and the Ants. Now, Adam Ant did a lot of records after that. I have several of them on vinyl. I have Strip. I have Viva La Rock and all that kind of stuff floating around. And they were good records, but I thought that they became a little bit almost too pop and too commercial, and they didn't have exactly the same kind of feel that I loved on the early records. I actually liked Viva La Rock more than I did Strip. Strip I didn't think was the greatest record I had ever heard. It had a couple good songs on it. Viva La Rock had a few songs on it that I was like, okay, this feels like rock and roll. This feels good, and I liked it. And that was probably the last thing Adam did of note for quite a while. You know, he came back with like Wonderful in the 90s and stuff like that. And now he's back again and just releasing, you know, an album a couple years ago. He's still out touring. He looks great, sounds great. You know, he's still out there doing his thing. Occasionally you'll see Marco pop up with like people here and there and do little guest spots, or he's on YouTube doing interviews, and it's really great to see him out there. But I guess the gist of this is I just really wanted to give a quick shout out to the impact and the meaning of Adam and the Ants and what they meant to me when I was very young, and what they still mean to me today, because I still pop these. Actually, I don't play the vinyl anymore. I rebought everything on CD, and I listen to that. You know what I mean? I don't touch the vinyl anymore. It's too precious, and I keep them locked up in a little box and everything like that. But they really were a band that had a huge, huge, huge impact on me. Adam and Marco and what they were doing. I just thought it was great. Maybe at some point in the future, I'll do like a retrospective rundown and break down every album by track listing or do something really cool. But I just want to say Adam and the Ants, if you don't know them, go back and listen to the first 4 or 5 records. Give it a good solid, you know, taking in. And there's some great gems on there, some influential stuff on there. And it's one of those bands that should never be forgotten in any point in history. You know what I mean? So anyway, everybody, God bless. Take care. Have a nice night, and peace out.